Hey everyone, happy Friday. Welcome back to the channel. You know, there's something quite special about using film. There's a sense of nostalgia that really comes along with it, perhaps harkening back to a more simple time, before all this connectivity and before the internet and when things were just a little more tactile. There's been a real movement of film photography enthusiasm built over the last few years. I think primarily Kylie Jenner helped introduce a lot of young people to the idea of film photography, but also online creators such as Sarah Dietschy, Grainy Days, Mango Street, and William Verbeek, to name a few. It's worth kind of prefacing this video by saying I'm in no way against digital photography. I absolutely love my DSLR, and I love my phone camera as well. I've built some amazing memories out of it. But the thing is, there's just something that I felt was missing from my photography. It was something that I kept trying to achieve with using filters and editing, and to be honest, I don't really like that part of the process. I much prefer to just take the photo straight out of body and be done with it. And there's certain character that film photography has that people often try to recreate using their digital photography. So I grew up in the 90s and was fortunate enough to be around film photography at that time, just before digital photography took over. I had one of those sort of small instant print cameras that kids were kind of given in those times, and I still have a lot of those photos today in my photo albums. And I feel like that's something that maybe we're losing with digital photography, because everything just kind of gets backed up into the cloud or on a hard drive, and how often do you check them, you know? So a couple of days after my wedding, I decided to jump straight back into film again. I really wanted to pick up a film camera for the first time in 20 years. I did a lot of research online to see which models I really wanted. At the time, I was looking at the Canon AE1. That's quite a popular choice at the moment. I've seen a lot of influencers using it, and I thought, okay, that looks like a really reasonable entry point. But unfortunately, those cameras are actually super expensive at the moment. So when I popped into the local camera shop in Brighton, I had a chat with the guy, and we sort of talked about what I was after, and I ended up leaving the shop with a Canon A1, this little bad boy here. Made in the late 70s, early 80s, something like that. Made in Japan, all metal. Very good stuff. So, before kind of jumping into the world of film photography, I had a few concerns. Firstly, I was so used to having my DSLR and also my camera phone where I could just take hundreds and hundreds of photos, and that's not really a problem. With film photography, you've got, 36 exposures maximum? And, you know, that's kind of intimidating. You get those questions in your head, you know? Will I screw the shot up? Will it be overexposed, underexposed? Will it be in focus even? You know, will the composition be right? What if I miss the moment because I'm faffing around with so many settings and I'm so worried about getting the perfect picture? And all of those are really valid concerns, but honestly, they're kind of a symptom of how fortunate we've become with the rise of digital technology. And the thing is, it's kind of a misconception in many ways that film photography is really complicated, or the cameras themselves are, you know, very manual. There's that misconception certainly with anything pre-80s, before the point-and-shoots. But honestly, I found that that's completely false. There are a few things that these film cameras from that time actually have to sort of hold your hand in your first steps into film photography. So most of them are actually fitted with a light meter, particularly after the 70s, and that will allow you to set the camera to fully automatic mode, including the aperture, including the shutter speed, and all you need to do, focus and shoot. Once you feel ready to move away from that, again, it's really easy to maybe just have shutter priority or aperture priority. You're able to be quite flexible with these things, and it's quite nice. It really does hold your hand in many ways, but gives you that freedom at the same time once you're ready to be creative. And all you really need to think about on the start of your sort of film photography journey is the ISO of the film, and that's usually really obvious. So for example, on this Ilford XP2 Super 400, see here, hopefully that'll focus, there we go, that 400 there denominates what the ISO is. So in that case, it's 400. As for focusing the shot, I understand that there's probably some trepidation there with how you would actually focus a shot and how it would work. particularly as we're so used to autofocus these days. But it's really quite intuitive, and after a few minutes, you pick it up super quick. So, I decided to set myself a challenge. For 30 days, I would use no other camera other than my film camera. So, no phone camera, no DSLR, apart from making these videos, of course. You're welcome. And the overall aim of this challenge was really to just try and be a little more mindful, a little more sort of intentional with how I did my hobbies, including my photography, especially my photography. Plus, I mean, film photography kind of looks dope, so when day one started and I bought the camera, there was a real novelty involved with using it. It looks amazing for a start. It's one of those kind of items that you could easily have on a bookshelf and look really cool as well. But not only the looks, but there's just so much kind of interaction with a camera like this. You have to open up the back, you have to push in the film yourself, you have to wind it on, you need to hit the next exposure lever every single time you take a photo. It's incredibly tactile, and the materials used back then are a lot better than those used now, perhaps. Now we're kind of used to sort of cheap plastics or really light metals and things like that, but back then it was a real chunk of, it was a real tool. It was a tool, it was a working tool. It was something that photographers would carry with them everywhere, and you really get a sense of that. You get to meet new people immediately. From the photography shop where you're buying the camera, to maybe where you're buying your first roll of film, maybe even where you're developing your first film. There's a lot of experience there and a lot of friendship and knowledge and community involved. Taking the first few photos on this camera felt amazing. It's just this really satisfying mechanical clunks involved when you're winding the film and when you're pressing the shutter down. It's really quite satisfying, and it's kind of one of those experiences that makes you want to take the camera everywhere with you. And you kind of learn quite quickly that composition is key here. You really have to slow down, you have to take your time, and you have to think about the shot. You can't just fire away like you would on a DSLR or a phone camera. You really have to consider all of these different aspects. The next few days were very much the same. If anything, it kind of reinforced to me how much I needed to slow down and how much I needed to focus on composition. You always have to have your camera out and ready to go, to be looking for all of these kind of cool opportunities for amazing photos. It 100% made me more mindful in those moments and helped me kind of appreciate everything around me, not just what was in front of me, but really take in everything from around me, because you were just looking for really interesting things that were going on. Quickly, however, the reality of the costs of film photography really started to sink in. Let me break this down for you piece by piece. So, a roll of Kodak 200 36 exposure film is about £4 if you buy 3 for 12. Otherwise, it's about £5 or £6 each. So as for the developing costs, if you went to a place that does a 1 hour turnaround and also print them for you, then that's around £14. You could definitely go cheaper if you wanted to, if you had the patience to wait a few days, or if you just wanted digital copies, but personally I find it really nice to have them printed out quickly and physically. So if there are 36 shots in a Kodak 200 gold film, you're talking about £18 per film, including the developing costs. That's 50p a shot, and that isn't anywhere near the most expensive film. You become quite aware of that after a while and sort of start taking fewer risks. Why waste a shot on something that you're not 100% sure about when the costs can rack up so quickly? As time went on, I started carrying the camera around with me literally everywhere I went. If I walked up to the shops, if I just went on a little stroll with my wife, to small outdoor events or meetups with friends, and you realise, you know what? This is kind of nice. Because the thing is, you have that limitation set in place, so there's only so many real shots you can get, which means that after a while, you actually have to participate in the event that you're in instead of just photographing everything. And after a while, you stop sort of worrying about the number of exposures that you have and how many you have left, and start moving your focus back to the moment, really taking in everything around you. You have those shots, you have those memories taken, and that's great. And now you can really just reinforce that with living in that moment. Now, I've been into a few camera shops since that time, and I noticed a couple of things. One, the appetite for film photography has improved greatly over the last few years. As I said previously, a lot of that is down to celebrities and influencers. But the other thing that I noticed is that the hardware is a lot more inexpensive than you would think, particularly when compared to its digital alternatives. Let's break that down. So, if you wanted a Canon 2000D DSLR camera with a kit lens, brand new, you'd be looking at around £500. If you wanted that second hand, you'd be looking at about £300 just for the body on a reputable site such as MPB, and then you would need to pick up another lens, maybe a 50mm 1.8 lens, let's say for around £100. You're still looking at about £400 up front, and you'd need to consider accessories like memory cards and spare batteries. This Canon A1, however, which admittedly is over 40 years old, I bought refurbished for £200. That's it. All you need to buy is some film occasionally, and very rarely a new battery for some of the automatic features. This, however, is bound to change quite rapidly, as I spoke to another business owner in London a couple of weeks ago who said that he's never been more busy in his life. Like, this real appetite for film photography has just increased so much that he's struggling to get orders turned around, and he's running out of really popular body types quite rapidly, to the point where now it's starting to inflate the price simply due to the demand for them. Now, at the end of my 30-day challenge, what were my main takeaways? Well, using a film camera has really changed my relationship with photography, definitely for the better. Because of its limitations, I can't go back and retake a shot constantly. I can't look at a screen to see how that shot looked. I've just got to trust in the process and develop my skills, no pun intended, as a photographer. I found that I've been really enjoying the process of film photography, from loading it to the mechanical clunks of using the camera, to talking to people in different camera shops and developing studios and things like that. It's a really nice process, and the community is so friendly, welcoming and helpful. It's quite expensive, but the thing is, those costs add just another layer of a limitation. You can't just go around firing off rolls of film. You know, if you were developing several rolls of film a week, you'd be broke. That is, of course, unless you're developing the film yourself, but there's a bunch of other videos on YouTube that can explain that process better than I ever could, because I have not gone down that rabbit hole yet. Coffee. Cheers. The real question is, will I continue using film photography after this little experiment? Yes, I think I will. But I'll also be leaning on the DSLR when it makes sense. There are certain times where having just a limit of 36 shots doesn't make sense, and when I might need access to different focal lengths and different lenses and things like that, or if I was doing more of a professional shoot, maybe a party or something, then I'd probably take my DSLR with me. But if I'm at small family events, or if I'm just out with my wife and kids, or if I'm just out with a couple of friends, I'd probably take the film camera, to be honest. I prefer the process a lot more, and it allows me to slow down, take purposeful photos, and not just waste a bunch of time worrying about all of my digital photos and having to edit them and all of that faffery. And the thing is, I'm probably going to invest in another film camera at some point. I'm enjoying it so much, and the dream really is to be able to afford a Leica. That's a real pipe dream, but that's what I want to achieve. Maybe you can help me do it by liking and subscribing to help me grow the channel. And, you know, I'm just going to carry on taking photos, getting them developed, and I've been quite enjoying writing on the back the sort of the date on there and maybe the location as well. It's something I want to build a collection of so I can show my son when he's a bit older and he can get kind of an idea of, you know, what we've been doing and some of our memories, and, you know, can kind of live through them. My wife actually shoots a Fuji Instax camera as well, so that's just kind of another way that we've been documenting our lives over the last few years. So I think kind of moving towards a film camera really made sense in many ways in the direction that we were heading as a family. So I've actually been uploading the odd shot or two onto my Instagram. So if you fancy seeing how I'm developing as a photographer and what sort of shots that I've been taking, then follow me at Rhys Angulatta, which is the same on Instagram as Twitter. You can even visit my new website, www. rhysangulatta.com. Fancy! And that's it. That's everything I've got for you this week. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'd love to know what your experiences with film cameras are. Let's start a community perhaps. It would be really nice to get some of us together and kind of talk about film cameras and things. Like this video if you enjoyed the content please, and do consider subscribing. It really helps the channel grow and it lets me know that you actually enjoy the videos that I kind of make for you guys. But until next time, ta-ra.